All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another live stream. And if you are wondering why I have the one AirPod in my ear, is because, as you can see here, hold on just a second. Okay, it's all good. All right, well, I can take this out now. All right, so the reason I had that in is, as you can tell, I have a new microphone here, and the reason it's so well. Let me step back for a second. It's been a wild couple of weeks for me personally. It is between work and personal life and everything. Like I've just been super busy, and just had weird things come up. And so 2 weeks ago, because I use this whole setup. All I have to do is unplug one cord from my personal my personal Mac Mini, and then plug it into my work laptop, and so I can use this whole setup for work. And I walked up here to my microphone one day, my old microphone, and it was just stopped working. And so it feels like everything has come off the rails in the last 2 weeks. So the reason I had my AirPod in is I was just listening to myself on my iPhone here just to make sure the audio sounds okay, and I think it is. So apologies, I have been absent. Like I said, it's been a wild couple weeks, and just pulling back the curtain a little bit on these projects. I do indeed work on all of these personal projects outside of work hours, which means that I have to choose between if I want to play video games or if I want to spend time with family or work on thof these projects outside of work. So I have chosen to not work on these. I've chosen to do other things instead. So that's part of the reason I'm not done any of these live streams lately. So apologies, I've been away, but we're back. So as you can see with my hoodie, it is now fall weather, and the autumn lighting setup that I have here in my office. So I'm feeling pretty good today. Fall is probably my favorite season. I like the changing of the color, like of the trees and stuff, and so yeah, and so I think yesterday was technically the first day of fall. We here in Illinois went from like a high of like 89 the other day to a high of 67 literally overnight. So that's Illinois weather for you. Okay, so enough of me talking about my personal stuff. So let's jump into today's project. Oh, and I guess one other thing to mention before we jump into today's project, I do like to bounce around between personal projects just to keep myself, like if I do the same thing with my whole entire personal life. I play multiple video games at once, I read multiple books at once, and I work on multiple projects at once. So if you are wondering, are we going to get back to the computer vision, rock, paper, scissors effort? Yes, we will. It's just that I chose to work on this other new projects instead. So what this new project is basically a way for us to learn natural language processing. So if you are unfamiliar with natural language processing, it is this whole idea of using machine learning or deep learning more so to be able to parse through a naturally worded sentence. And the reason that this is such a difficult problem for us to solve is that the English language, or any language for that matter, is not consistent. Meaning that the way we phrase things, the words that we choose, or even when it comes to written language, it is difficult to really understand how because something as small as omitting a single comma can change the entire context of what you are saying. And so if you think about the phrase, because this is a popular one that you'll learn in school, the phrase "let's eat grandma." If you have a comma right after the word eat, so it's "let's eat, comma, grandma," that's like saying, "Okay, grandma, let's go eat a meal together," or something. Whereas if you omit that comma, it makes it seem as if you are trying to literally eat your grandma. So that's an entirely different context. So I thought that it would be fun to work on a project that is going to be associated to natural language processing. And more specifically, so I'm not like a stock market guy myself per se. I do have some investments and whatnot, but not exactly in stocks, more so in index funds. But I thought, because people really with the stock market in particular try to figure out how to beat the stock market with investments, I wondered if there was a way that we could kind of have fun with that. Now, to be perfectly clear with this project, because I have to be extremely careful with this, do not use this as financial advice at all. This is intended to be a project for learning purposes and for fun. It is not intended to really actually beat the stock market. And to be completely transparent, when we get to the end of this project, I don't think it's going to fare that well anyway. I don't want to be naive enough to think like, oh, I've cracked the code on this thing. because I am certain that people have tried using natural language processing, using basically everything under the sun to try to beat the stock market. And as you can tell, nobody's been able to do that. So again, this is just for fun. I'm also a big Twitter user, so this is with the whole my interest in natural language processing plus the finance plus the Twitter, that's when we get this whole project that I'm calling the Twitter Cashtag NLP project. So if you are unfamiliar with what a cashtag is, you might be familiar with what a hashtag is. So hashtag is, it starts with that pound sign or the tic-tac-toe sign, whatever you want to call it. And it's basically a way to tag tweets that you can then click on that, and then you can see what other people are saying about that certain topic. Now, so hashtags are extremely popular, not just on Twitter, but across other platforms as well, even here on LinkedIn, which, by the way, if you are watching either on LinkedIn or on YouTube right now and you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm monitoring them down here. But anyway, so with hashtags, because people may not necessarily know that this is a thing, hashtags are basically a different variant of a hashtag. So as opposed to a hashtag, so a hashtag begins with a pound sign, a cashtag begins with the $sign, and it usually is followed by a series of characters that represent a stock ticker symbol. So for example, if you are familiar with Apple, or in Apple stock, you will know that Apple's ticker symbol is AAPL, or Tesla's is TSLA. And so, the financial people on Twitter use these hashtags as a way to tag their tweets as opposed to a typical hashtag. So here's trying to wrap up this whole project in, a general summary. What I want to explore doing is, can we use these hashtag based tweets to understand a segment of the market better, or a sentiment of the market. So as people are tweeting things and whatnot about a certain stock, can we derive a sentiment about how people are feeling with that stock, and then maybe use that for a predictive analysis to see if the stock will move up or down? I haven't necessarily settled on how far I want to go with this project. I'm thinking about just keeping it at the sentiment analysis and not really looking at like the stock price at all, because like I said, this project is mostly intended to be for just the NLP understanding of things. I'm not trying to get this to be a real thing. But if I'm thinking, if I were to try to make this a real thing, which again, to be perfectly clear, may not even be worth it because it's so difficult to predict the behavior of the stock market. That's when you might use, you could augment the project with something like, comparing the sentiment analysis of these tweets to a specific stock. And we don't even necessarily need to go to a specific stock. You could just get a bunch of stocks that are seemingly associated with one another. So you could get, Twitter, Facebook, and, the other social media giants, and say, okay, the social media segment, this is how people are generally feeling about the sentiment about the thing. So, because basically I want to see, can we derive any understanding from these hashtag based tweets to understand if people are feeling good about a stock, or people are concerned about a stock that would drive that the human behavior would drive the price up or down. And so again, I gotta say it. I feel like I gotta say this a million times. Do not use this for real financial advice. This is not intended to be a financial advice thing. It's intended to be a learning purposes kind of thing. So with that, step number one is going to be, how can we work with the Twitter API? And so that is what today's focus is going to be on. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Hold on, I got to check. I'm getting text. Okay, sorry about that. Unfortunately, I do have a sick kid right now, and that was just my wife texting me about her. I think she's doing okay. Unfortunately, she's had a bit of a cough the last week, and so she's missed some school, but we did, never mind. So anyway, as I'm sharing my screen here, so this is the Twitter developer portal. So with this project, we are going to be using the legitimate Twitter API. And if you are not familiar with the Twitter API, there actually is, so there is like different tiers that Twitter offers in order to be able to interact with this API. So this is not an open API. This is something that you actually have to get permission from Twitter to use. and then you are based off of your tier level, then you can interact with it in a certain way. So I am on a free tier. I think their free tier is actually called the Essential tier. And what the Essential tier gets you is like X number of tweets per month. Excuse me. And I believe that I can query up to 200,000 tweets a month, which sounds like a lot. And it is for our purposes. For our purposes, that's going to be enough. But if you're an enterprise, I'm sure that Twitter's getting, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of tweets a day. So there are higher tiers. They are not free, but even the free tier is not openly available. So the whole process of getting access to the Twitter API requires that you do open a form and submit a business case, which I already did. So my only advice here with opening your business case to them is to be transparent with what you are doing. And so my business case to them is that I am using this to learn natural language processing for myself and then also teach it to others. So I did not have any problems getting access to the Twitter API with that. And like I said, I only do have access to the Essential tier. So if I show you here just my developer portal really quick, and actually I did write a whole blog post about this already. So this entire live stream is basically a rehash of the same blog post that I wrote. So if you go to dkhunley.com and then you click on the Medium link, it'll take you over to Medium where that article is hosted. And then it basically walks through everything that we're going to be doing today, except in a written form. In fact, let me just show you real quick. So if I go to Medium, and then I go to my articles, where are my articles at? My articles, where am I at? I can't see oh, there's my face. Sorry, I can't really see my monitor super well down up here. Okay, so here. So this article here is basically covering the exact same thing that we are going to be talking about today, including screenshots and everything. So if I come back to the Twitter developer portal here, you can see that this is like the front end of here. So actually it looks like, oh, okay, I was wrong. I don't remember it being 4 million. I wonder if it increased. Okay, so I apparently get 4 million tweets a month. And so you can create various projects associated to here, and these projects then get associated to API keys. So specifically, there is an API key, and there's also a bearer token, and the bearer token is actually the thing that we'll be working with. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second because I want to see if I can show you this thing without accidentally revealing my stuff. Okay, yeah, I can. All right, so let me go ahead and start sharing again, because again, so I guess I shouldn't have to say this, but I'll just say this anyway. Anytime you are working with API keys or whatnot that are associated to you should be extra careful to protect those at all costs, because if they get out into the world, so you can see here, I've already generated these, and so you can't see them. I've already saved them to my local machine. And I'm not pushing them up into GitHub, because if they get out there, somebody's going to take them and somebody's going to abuse them. And my guess is the worst case scenario that's going to happen is that you would just get banned from being able to use the Twitter API, which is not obviously not the end of the world, but it's not preferable, of course. So I am going to be extremely careful that I am not sharing my API keys. And so if you work in a large corporation and you also need to use these API keys, you need to be careful about storing those in a secure location. So like I just said, I'm being transparent. My API keys are just stored on my local machine, my personal local machine, to be clear. And so, which is not, super preferable. But the enterprise that I work for, we use HashiCorp Vault. So HashiCorp Vault is a great option to store these keys in. But that's, there's some extra setup there that I actually, now that I think about it, I do think I have an instance of Vault on my local machine here, so maybe I should stick it in Vault. But anyway, so at the very least, what I did to protect my keys is, so you can see here, this is IntelliJ, and I apologize, I can't really zoom in super well in here, but you can see here that there's a keys directory and it's kind of grayed out. And the reason it's grayed out is that I have a git ignore file here, and what this git ignore file is doing is basically saying, okay, with this, since I have this directory called keys here, And basically anything in the keys directory should not be pushed up to GitHub. So even though I do push all my code up to GitHub, I do have my keys protected a little bit by using this git ignore file and making sure that that is not being pushed up. Okay, so that's the Twitter developer portal at a high level. I do want to show some documentation just so you can get familiar with how the Twitter API works. So we are actually going to be interact, even though we are using the Python coding language, as that's, a very common language for machine learning. We are not going to be using any sort of like special Python library. And the only reason, and the primary reason for that is, I actually found, because I don't think the Twitter Python libraries are necessarily created by Twitter themselves. I think they're created by other people to support Twitter. I interacted with 2 or 3 of them, and I just found them confusing to use. So we are not going to be using any special Twitter Python library. Instead, we are going to use the API directly. And so if you are familiar with things like curl request, we are going to essentially be doing the same thing as curl request, except in Python. So in Python, there is a Python library called request, and so we are going to make requests out to these APIs. And so this is what I was talking about here, where there's these different levels. And so I don't know. Well, this is curious. It's just curious because I'm at the essential level, and I don't know why it's saying 500,000, but my project said 4 million, and same here. So there are different levels. I believe these other elevated and academic research levels do have some costs associated to them. Like I said, I am using a free tier, so thank you. I guess I should say, if anybody from Twitter is watching, thank you for this. So this is really, really cool. So I really appreciate this, and I'm sure that anybody else watching this is also very appreciative. So yeah, and then you can see off on the left, there's a lot of different documentation on how to use things, and there's a lot of different samples over in GitHub. So this was super helpful for me whenever I was doing my project here. Now, the one challenge that I have had with this particular project is I was not aware of the fact that Cashtag support is relatively limited at the moment. In fact, when I first started this project, I've had this idea for this project for well over a year now, but the actual thing that I'm going to be using in today's live stream was actually just published in July of this year, like 2 months ago. So, and even that is relatively limited. So, that's the part of the reason why I can't use like the search tweets API Python library, is because this functionality that we're going to be using, I do not believe has been enabled here. So just be aware that there's a lot of great documentation in this developer portal. So the URL for this is developer.twitter.com. And the developer.twitter.com will allow you to sign up for the API and fill out your business case, and then be able to get you. I don't remember how long it took it to process, but it wasn't too terribly long. I think a couple days for them to process, maybe even faster now, because I actually got access a long time ago for a totally different project. And there is just showing off on here on the left, there are a lot of different things. We're going to be using the Twitter API version 2. So to be transparent, I don't know what the difference between version 2 or version 1 is and when version 2 necessarily came around. We're just going to stick with version 2. And we are going to, because like I said, I do want to use the cache tags. What we're going to have to use is this functionality called the filtered stream. And so what the filtered stream is doing is whenever you set up your project, and you initiate it, it was going to consistently give you tweets back for whatever your rules you want in perpetuity until you tell it to stop. Or until you hit your limit, I guess. I've never hit my limit. And you could see here, so we're going to be setting up these things called operators. And I'm trying to find where the operators are located at right now. Operators, where are you? I thought I had a link to the operators here somewhere. Twitter objects, integrate, filtered stream quick start guide. Okay. Okay, yeah, here we go. Operators. So the operators here are basically rules that we can set for what we want to query. And so, like I said, we are going to be querying tweets that have Cashtag based tweets in them. And there, you can do and logic, or logic, not logic. And then I believe if we scroll down here further, it'll actually show us what the operators are. So here are the different operators. So we could use keywords, we can have emojis, exact matching phrases, and then here we go. This is the oops, sorry about that. This is the big one that we're going to be using. This is the standalone cache tags. And the reason that we're having to use the filtered stream API as opposed to like a straight tweets lookup is because, or a search tweets, is unless things have changed in the last 2 weeks, there is no operator for cache tag based tweets. So I think you can search for tweets using the like hashtags or other things, but cache tags seem to be limited just to filtered streams right now, which is honestly kind of a bit of a problem for this project, and I'm not really sure how to deal with this quite yet. And it's a problem in the sense that we need enough tweets to be able to train our predictive model at some point, and I don't know if I'm going to get enough quality tweets through this filtered stream API that it's going to be worth for the training portion of this project. And specifically because the filtered stream is just giving you back all of the tweets that have the cache tag associated to them, and unfortunately there are a lot of tweets, as you'll see, that we come through that they're not very good. It's just I got to be careful because Elon's accusing Twitter of this, but I have noticed myself that whenever I use the filtered stream API, it seems like there's a lot of bots in here. So again, Twitter, I really appreciate you. I'm not trying to cause any problem, but that is what I have noticed. Myself. And so perhaps at some point they may add the functionality to be able to search tweets using the cache tag operator, but for now we do have to use the filtered stream. Okay, so that is enough of talking just about the project at a high level. So let's actually get into some coding. All right, so like I said, I do have my keys stored in this YAML file here. I will not reveal them, but I am going to create a new file, new Python file here. I'm going to call this Twitter stream API.py. Okay, I'm going to add this, and then I'm going to zoom in here. And then first things first, we need to import a couple libraries that we're going to be using. Importing the necessary Python libraries. Okay, so we're going to be importing these. So we need to import 4 of them. I can't. Let me read first, because like I said, I prepare for these things beforehand, and I've actually written the script already before, and I'm looking at it right now. But the reason I don't do this super live anymore is because for those of you who've watched me before, you notice that I'm not very good at thinking and talking at the same time. So I'm just looking at here to see what the OS is being used for, because I can't recall off the top of my head. Okay, but anyway, I can't recall. But so the 4 libraries that we need is the OS library, which is a standard Python library, JSON, which is another standard library, YAML. So I actually believe that YAML is not a standard library. If you do want to install this, you have to do a pip install PyYAML, I believe. And like I said, if you really want to know, or if you want to follow along with the same live stream that we're doing today, I already wrote it out in blog form, so you're welcome to follow along with that. And the last one, like I mentioned, is we're going to be importing the request library. So again, the request library is not a default library, so this is another one that you are going to have to import. Okay, so those are the libraries that we're going to need. Now let's go ahead and do a little bit of a script setup. And then this is not necessary if y'all are wondering. I just like to do this for organizational purposes. And I'm gonna copy this. This is basically my way of creating a fake header to break things out into sections. Okay, and then I like to put 3 spaces in between my sections. I am very nitpicky when it comes to organization. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is load in our bearer token. So like I said, I have saved it to my YAML file. Let me just create a fake YAML file just to show you what what that YAML file actually looks like without actually revealing that YAML file. So I'm going to call this dummy.yaml here. And so what that YAML file looks like is I have a header in here called like DK Hundley keys or something, keys. And then when I do a tab over or underneath here, I'll have something like my token, and then another colon of just a random series of characters, because most keys are just a long string of characters, and then bearer token, something like that, bearer token. So then I can have another series of characters. So this is what my other YAML file looks like. Again, I can't show you that other YAML file because that would be revealing my keys, but just so you can get an understanding of what the structure of that YAML file looks like and how we're going to be using that. Okay, so let's go ahead and loading in my personal Twitter bearer token from a sensitive file not uploaded to GitHub. So we're just going to use the standard Python open here. So we're going to, with open. And so I'm going to reference that other directory. So going up one into keys. Oh, wait, sorry. I got to put the quotes. Up one, over to keys, over into, I think I have that called Twitter API keys.yaml. We're going to open this in open this in a read format, R as F. So we're just going to give this a temporary alias as F. So this is where we use this PyYAML library. So we're loading the whole thing we're just going to call it Twitter keys with YAML. So YAML.safe load F. So loading in the same file. And then we're going to grab the token from the file. So the bearer token equals Twitter keys. And then, like I said here, so first level is going to be DK Hundley keys. Next level is going to be token. I think in my other file, actually, I have it called DK Hundley Twitter creds, and then bearer token. So yeah, so it's high level. So this is basically the entire file, top level, second level. So entire file, top level, second level. So hopefully that makes sense. And so again, that is my kludgy way, or my very simple way of just making sure that my keys are not getting revealed to anybody. Okay, did I spell everything right there? I'm getting some squiggly lines. So I think I did though. All right, so that is my token. So next thing that we have to do is we have to set up this special little this is basically setting up the handlers that are going to pass in my token. So this is actually something that I basically straight copy and pasted from Twitter's examples and their GitHub examples. So this is just a simple function that is taking our bearer token and then creating a header out of that is going to be passed into the API when we start calling the API, and that API is so then we can properly authenticate with the API and interact with it appropriately. Okay, so setting up a helper function to handle headers. So this is technically called OAuth authorization. So we're not going to cover too much what OAuth authorization is, partially because it's sort of out of scope to really understand what that's doing, and also partially because I don't know what it means. So I'm not a security expert by any means. I know enough to know that, like, okay, here's what I should be doing, or here's what I should not be doing. So like I have been saying multiple times, I know enough to know that, like, I shouldn't be revealing my API keys, but I don't know enough to know like what are the ins and outs of like what the OAuth necessarily is. So all right, so I need to set the authorization. So this is actually going to be our API contain our bearer token. So do an F string here, and then the word bearer, and then within the brackets here, I'm going to put the word bearer token. So this is basically taking the same token that we got here and then sticking it in here as a header. And then, oops, how did that happen? Well, I don't know how that happened. That was weird. I've never seen that happen. Okay, anyway, sorry about that. All right, so r.headers. So that we need to put something called a user agent. And again, this is where I'm not super familiar with what this is. I just basically copied this particular piece from Twitter's GitHub, and just using it directly. So filtered stream Python Okay, and then we're going to return R. So, and you'll see how this is used later on. And then, all right, so then another thing that we have to do is we actually have to set the name of the Twitter API URL. So, setting the proper API URL. So I'm going to call this Twitter API URL. And so this is just going to be a static little thing that I'm just going to copy and paste in. So this I got from, again, this same portal here. I can't remember exactly where. So filtered stream, it's somewhere in here. I probably did I probably found it in this quick start guide here. Somewhere. Okay, there it is, right here. This is what I grabbed here. So it's from the documentation here. So again, the documentation for the Twitter API is pretty good, I think. Now, to be transparent, if you're not familiar with working with APIs, it can be a little bit take a little bit of understanding to really understand what all this is, but after you learn it, it's not too bad. It's actually pretty good documentation. All right, so that's the Twitter Stream API. So this is like going to be a base level API. So as with any other APIs, this is version 2. So anything like the search tweets is probably going to have. Oops, sorry. I keep dragging things around today. Like this downstream stuff would change if I was doing like a different kind of search. So that's the basic API. I think, and then, all right, so here's where I'm going to start using the operators. So like I said, we are going to have to basically tell the Twitter stream or the Twitter API that, we want to interact with the API with these specific rules. And actually, I think I'm going to jump into a Jupyter notebook that I had created for this. I didn't think I was going to use this, but I think I think this is going to be easier to demonstrate some things. Where is my project? Do I have it running? Okay, so here we go. All right, so this is a similar notebook that to what we're going to be working through. So loading in some of these things, loading in that. And so I have some links to things. These same links are in that same Medium article in case you're curious. So I do want to, I guess we'll how do I want to approach this here? Well, you know what? Let's just skip that section and we'll come back to this. All right, so that's the basic setup. We're going to add some more stuff to the setup, but before then, I want to show some things. So the first thing that we want to do is, because the way the filter stream API works is before you actually initiate the stream, you have to set the operators for what you want to query necessarily. And so as you can guess, if you want to check what you already have there first, there is a way to do that. So that's what this section is going to be doing. So checking current stream rules. I'm going to call that this section, and I'm going to copy down this line here. Okay, so I'm going to just do a print statement, just so when we execute this script, it's really clear. Print checking the current rules. Okay. All right, so the way that we check the current rules is we are going to call out to the Twitter API this very specific URL. We're going to pass in our authorization token using the request library, and we're going to get a response back from that API. And if the response is a 200 level code, if you're not familiar with the HTTP response codes, the biggest ones are, so there's 200. So 200 is like a green light success. And then the other primary ones are the 400 levels. So the biggest ones that you might be familiar with is definitely 404. 404 is probably the most infamous one out there. So that is something cannot be found for whatever reason. And then the next most popular one is 403. And 403 is if something does exist, but you don't necessarily have access to it. So like, let's say if I called up to the Twitter API and I did not pass in my bearer token or something was wrong with it, I would get a 403 error back. So we are going to be calling out to the Twitter API to check what rules currently exist. And if it has a 200 code response, then we are going to read back in that response appropriately. So first things first, so let's checking with the Twitter API to see which rules currently are set for the filtered stream. Okay, so the way that we do that, so that we, like I said, we're going to be getting a response back. We are going to be doing a get request. So if you are not familiar, and let me move my head so you all can see this a little bit better. If you are not familiar with working with APIs again, there are a different number of actions that we can take. So the two most popular actions are get and post. So a get request is basically I am reaching out to something and I want to get some information about something, but I'm not necessarily sending in any information, which is what we're doing here. We're just checking what the rules are, as opposed to a post. And a post is where we are actually sending information, and then that sending of the information is going to be getting our some sort of information. So we are going to be doing a get request in order to check what the current rules are. And then we're going to do a post request to actually change what those rules are eventually. And then when we actually start the filtered stream up to actually get tweets in a live fashion, that is going to be another get request, because again, those filtered rules will have already been set. Okay. Any questions? I don't see any questions down there, so we'll keep going. All right, so response equals request dot.get. I'm going to do another f string. So this is where I'm going to use the Twitter API URL, and API URL, and then we actually do need to add append on a little thing on here for rules. And then, so this is using the request library to perform this appropriately, and then to actually pass in our bearer token appropriately. This is how we're going to use this helper function from above. So, oops, sorry about that. All right, so we are going to put auth equals bearer, not bearer token, bearer OAuth. So that again, this is basically going to be passing in our bearer token whenever we call out to the API. Twitter API rules. Okay, so just making sure that I got my syntax there correct. Okay. Excuse me. All right, so this is how, all right, so that is actually making the call out to there. Now we are going to do a little bit of an if statement to make sure that everything is fine, and if there is a problem, then we will raise an error. So printing out the appropriate response, whether it be the appropriate rules or an error. So again, we should be getting back a 200 response code. So that's where we're going to say if response.status code, because there is a status code thing associated to this little object that we're creating. If response.status code is not equal to 200, so if something went wrong, then we are going to raise an exception here. So raise exception. So I'm going to do another f string here. Cannot get rules http. So I'm going to print out whatever the actual response code is that we're seeing a problem with. So response. Oh my gosh, I can't type right now. Response.status code. Response.status code. And then all right, and then I'm going to do whatever the response.text is, response.text. So again, there are multiple attributes associated to the same response object. So this is basically saying, okay, if we have something go wrong here, then we want to print out whatever the status code is, and we want to print out whatever the text is. So and usually the API will say something like status code 403, and then the text will say something like you don't have access or something. So there's that. But if we're all good to go, I'm just going to print out the current rules. So current rules, space, and then I'm going to print out the current rules in a JSON format. So print JSON.dumps response.json. Okay, making sure I got all my syntax there correctly. And then and so this is going to become more apparent of why I'm doing this here in a minute, but I am actually going to save those rules to a variable. So saving the results to a variable. So actually, I'll just say why we're doing this. So current rules equals response.json. The reason I'm saving them here is because I'm actually, as part of this script, going to be showing you how to delete the current delete the current filtered stream rules if any exist. So what this is basically doing is saying, okay, I want to get the current rules, and if they exist, delete them all out, wipe them all out, and then put the new ones in place anytime the script is initiated. So you don't have to do this. This is just something that I'm choosing to do just as a helper to y'all to understand how to interact with the Twitter API in a number of different ways. Okay, so there is that. That is that. So that's how we check the current rules. And actually, let me go ahead and execute this in my Jupyter Notebook here, since I do have this open. So you can see here, I'm going to print out these rules, and I screwed something up. So transparently, I actually regenerated my tokens and on my overall here on my Microsoft Surface, and then I moved them over to my Mac this morning, and I'm gonna guess that I did not copy them over appropriately. So you can see here, I guess our error code is working. So you can see here that unauthorized, and yeah. All right, so let me stop sharing my screen here really quick, because I'm going to just regenerate these tokens really quick and then save them back into my file, and hopefully we'll be good to go here. So sorry about the, I should have been a little bit more diligent about checking this. Again, I don't want to reveal these things, so just give me a minute here and I will regenerate this token. So I've regenerated it right now. Yes, I have saved it. I'm going to put it over in my keys.yaml file here. I'm going to stick it here. Paste, save, and okay, let me try running this once again before I start resharing my screen again. Okay, so, all right, run. Okay, all right, we're good to go. All right, now let me start sharing my screen again. Okay, so sorry about that. I guess that is the nice thing about the Twitter API, again, is you see how fast I was able to regenerate that token. I regenerated it literally in the 30 seconds you watched me. Well, you didn't literally see me do it, but I did it. But now you can see that now that I've run this cell, you can see that I already, because I've already run this, you can see that I already do have some current rules in place. So that you can see that I actually set this rule to be, I want to search for any Twitter or a tweet that has one of these three cache tags associated with them. So one of AAPL, which represents Apple, like Apple Computer, TSLA represents Tesla, and then TWTR represents Twitter. Okay, so these rules are already in place. Now, what I would like to show you how to do is how to delete the current rule. So let me make another section in here on deleting the rule. So this is going to be a post request, because we are going to be posting up to this the filtered stream rules API here, and saying, you know what, we don't want these rules currently here because we want to wipe them out and put some new ones in. And by the way, you can have multiple sets of rules associated with things. And so this is actually cool, and I haven't played around with this too much, because you can actually give rules a certain tag. And the nice thing about those tagged rules, so let's say I have one rule for the Tesla API and one rule for the Apple API, is I can have it, then my code parse through those different tags to say, okay, if I get an Apple API, or an Apple Cashtag based tweet, then I can do X action with it. So I'm not doing anything fancy with this today. We may do something fancier with that going forward, but for now we're keeping things somewhat simple. So let me just change the heading here. So deleting current rules. So like I said, we do have the current rules already in place. If you don't have any rules, then this little bit of code does nothing, which is fine. So because we're going to manage the thing with an if block here. So iterating through any currently existing rules in order to delete them. Okay, so the way that we do this is we're going to check that current rules variable if current rules is not none. So if it doesn't have anything in it, or data is not in there, so in current rules, and let me actually show you that, because in my Jupyter Notebook over here. And by the way, if you're wondering why I'm not doing everything in a Jupyter Notebook as opposed to a Python script, the reason is I actually found that, so some of these commands actually work just fine in a Jupyter Notebook, but when it actually comes to actually streaming the results in this last cell, it did not want to work in a Jupyter Notebook. So that's why I'm doing everything here in a Python script. So let me just show you here. So these are the current rules, like I said. So we are checking here to see if data is in the current rules, and you can see in this current response here that there is data here. And so this is the ID of my rule. This is the value of the rule. So basically it's saying run this block if there are rules here, which you can see there are. Okay. So if we're in the current rules, I'm going to print I'm going to do a print statement, deleting current rules. Okay, let me scroll down a little bit more again. Oh, probably need to move my face once again. Sorry about that. Okay, all right, so first we need to collect the IDs of the rules. So collecting the IDs of the currently existing rules. Okay, so the way that we do that is current, I'm going to set this to a variable to current rule IDs. Current rule IDs, so we're going to use a little bit of a Lambda function here, a Python Lambda function, not to be confused with an AWS Lambda function. So we are going to take a list of a map of this Lambda function, and what this Lambda is going to say, okay, I want the rules for, where is it at? So rule ID, so we want that ID number in current rules.data. So current rules, no, not dot data, I apologize, brackets data. Okay, so what, again, if this is a little bit of a confusing syntax, I got to make sure that I have the right parens here. Is this correct? Just want to highlight these things. Okay, so what this is doing, because this is a bit of a fancy footwork kind of code, is it's looking at the current rules and looking at the data, like I said, in the current rules, and it's extracting any of these IDs out of here. So, you know, because each of these rules that get posted have a unique ID associated to them, and so that's, and we're mapping that as a list here. Okay, and in fact, because I'm kind of nervous that I didn't type this right, I'm gonna copy and paste from my bottom screen down here just to really make sure that I didn't. Okay, yeah, I'm glad I'm glad I did, because I did have a typo in there. All right, so collecting the IDs of the currently existing rules. All right, so now we need to structure a payload that we are going to send back up to the Twitter API to say, okay, which is going to be a post request, and we're going to say, okay, we want to delete these current rules. So structuring a delete payload to the API. Okay, so delete payload equals, so this is where you have to start it with the word delete. So this is basically a tiny little Python dictionary, and then we need to pass in the IDs, and the IDs are going to be our current rule IDs, like so. I'm just checking to make sure that I got all the syntax. So that's the payload that we're going to be passing in. And then this next piece is going to look semi-familiar to you. So this is going to be, so we're sending the delete payload to the API. And so let's do response equals request. Now, instead of we did a .get up here because we were just getting the rules. Now we're actually going to be doing a post. So we're going to do a .post, and this is going to look familiar to you because this is the same thing up here. So I'm going to copy this. So this is the rules API for the filtered streams, and then we are going to once again pass in our auth equals bear OAuth, and then this is where things get a tiny bit different because now we are passing in a payload. So we need to put JSON equals delete payload. All right, so this is going to, again, post up what the rules that we want to delete, and we are going to get a response back from there. Okay, so again, we are going to do something similar here. So we are verifying the results, the delete results. So we are going to get, again, we should be getting a 200 error code back here. I'm sorry, not 200 error code, 200 response code here if things worked. So if it's not a 200 response code, we're going to print out to see what exactly went wrong for debugging purposes. All right, so if response code dot status code is not equal to 200, then we are going to raise an exception. And because I don't want to get this wrong, I'm just going to copy and paste this. Again, being transparent, this isn't, I call this a live coding stream, but it's not super live because I did pre-write all this code because I'm not very good at typing things on the fly. Yeah, sorry to dispel the illusion there. All right, so response.json. All right, and then do I have enough parens there? That's the one tricky thing, is making sure that your syntax is correct with all the right parens and everything. So we're just going to delete or show our response. Okay, so that is how we delete them. Now we are going to show how to add the new rules. And this is where actually we're going to come back to up to our script setup, because I actually prefer to keep these things up here. So the way that we do that is we, like I said, we need to pass in our syntax with the specific operators that we want to do. And so for our new rules, we're going to be doing the same thing that we did here in the Jupyter Notebook, because we want to search for any Cashtag based tweet that has AAPL, TSLA, or Twitter in them. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to create a new thing here called setting parameters. Well, I guess I should call this operators. Setting operators for, did I not spell that right? I probably didn't. Setting operators for new rules. And so I'm going to call this new rules equals brackets. And then within the brackets, we need to have a little bit of like a Python dictionary here that says value. And then this is where we actually put in what we want to query. So like I said, AAPL, or like I said, because the Twitter API allows for conditional operators, TSLA for Tesla, or $TWTR. All right, any questions? Just checking to see if any questions. Okay. All right, new rules. So that is that. And now we need to actually structure a secondary payload that's actually going to be the one that we pass up into the Twitter API with these rules attached to them. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to say structuring payload to add new rules. And so it actually doesn't matter necessarily where we put this little bit of code here. I just personally prefer to keep it up in the script setup section. I have like a personal like coding style. I don't know if you can tell throughout these streams. I'm a heavy annotator. I like to put three lines of spacing between my headings. I like to and I like to whenever I do any sort of script setup, I usually put them at the top of the script here. So any sort of hard-coded variables like this, I like to put toward the top. All right, so add payload. I'm going to call this the add payload equals. In fact, now that I think about it, I don't know why I put the well, never mind. All right, so this is going to look similar to the delete payload. So what we're going to do is an add as a Python dictionary, and we're going to stick in the new rules. So the new rules are going to be structured as such. And so I guess we could have just combined this together to make the code a little bit simpler. But I think this is a tiny bit easier to understand in my personal perspective. Okay, so let's show you how, just like we deleted the rules, it is very similar to add them. So let's create a new section here, adding new rules, adding new filtered. Well, okay, I'll just call it adding new rules. Okay, so, all right. I'm going to do a print statement, adding new rules. And then again, we're doing something very similar to here. Can you all guess what we're going to do? Anybody? We are, okay, I'm going to copy this because this is so similar. So we are going to be sending the add payload to the API. So this is basically the exact same thing that we sent before, except instead of sending a delete payload, we're going to send in the add payload. So this is how we do this as such. And again, so I'm starting to get a little bit lazy here. So this is where I don't really understand why they necessarily do this, but whenever you add new rules, the successful HTTP response code is actually not 200 in this case, it's a 201. And so instead of looking for a 200 response code, we are looking for a 201. And I just copied and pasted this in because this is, we're starting to rehash a lot of the same things here. So it cannot add rules. We are looking for a 201. This is going to look very similar to the things that we've already done. So let's just keep on going. Now, so just to recap, we have loaded in our bearer token. We have said all the things that we need to interact with the API. We are checking the current rules. We are saving the current rules if they exist to a little bit of a variable here. If the current rules exist, we are going to delete them out. And then we're going to add the new rules. And then finally, we're actually ready to start the stream up. All right, so I'm going to add one final section here. All right, so, all right, I'm going to call this starting tweet stream. Okay, and then I'm going to do a print statement. Just, I like to do print statements just to, like, as a sanity check when these things actually start. Starting tweet stream with new rules in effect. And then, all right, like I said before, the Twitter API will continue to give you new more and more tweets until you hit, well, in perpetuity really, unless you manually stop it, or if you have some sort of homegrown criterion to stop it. So that's what I'm going to do. What we're going to do here is I'm going to start the stream, and I'm going to stop it once it hits 20 tweets. So I'm going to call this counter. I'm going to create a variable here called counter, and I'm going to set it to 0. Well, just to be more clear, I'm going to call it tweet counter, set it to 0. And then once it hits 20, we're going to stop the stream. So let me put a comment on here. So initializing the tweet counter. All right, so tweet counter is 0. Starting the stream, or tweet stream, I guess. Tweet stream. I don't know why I capitalized this here. Sorry, I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to writing my own code. All right, so this is going to, again, start to look a little bit familiar, but there is another bit to this, so request.get. This time, because we're not interacting with the rules, we can just interact with the Twitter API URL directly as we have initially defined it. So no fancy f-string formatting here. So auth equals o, or bearer OAuth once again. And then here's where things get a tiny bit different. We're going to set a stream value equals true. So that is starting up a stream. All right. So, and then I'm now here is where we can actually start to extract the tweets as they come in, and we're going to do this real time, and we'll see how this works out. And hopefully I didn't type anything wrong. So printing out stream results until 20 tweets have been surfaced. All right, so the way that we do this, so for response line in response.iterLines, so this is looking at the responses, and so again, in case you're curious where I got this code, this is directly from the Twitter documentation here, or not here, but within here. And like I said, they have some great information up on their on their company GitHub, for example. So a lot of this code came from here. I did alter it because there actually was not a thing that would stop it when there was 20. So I did alter it to make sure that it would stop if once it hits 20. And that's what this here is going to be doing here. So if response line, so this is just making sure that there is something in the response there. If response line, and then I'm going to do if tweet counter is greater than or equal to 20. So it should never go greater than, but I'm just doing that to be safe. Then we're going to break the stream. Else we're going to increment the stream, or the tweet counter. So tweet counter plus equals 1, so that is incrementing the counter. Then we are going to print out how many tweets have been serviced. So f-string tweet counter is a tweet counter. Sorry, tweet counter. So we're just printing out how many tweets we've surfaced so far. And then we are going to grab the JSON response from, that's actually going to have like I'm sorry, not results. Response from, that's actually going to grab the results from the tweet itself. I have, I'm winded. Like, if you don't do a whole lot of talking, like, because I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff, and it's always interesting to hear people talk about how they have to be careful with their voice. And like it never really clicked with me until I started doing these live streams that like if you do a lot of talking like straight like this, your voice really does give out. And so that's why I'm kind of trying to rush this along, is my voice is really giving out. All right, so JSON response equals JSON dot loads. Then we're going to load that response line as such, and then we're going to print this out. So print JSON dot dumps JSON response, and then we're going to use some pretty printing here with some indentation, and then the sort keys equals true. All right, so this, if I did not screw up the syntax, which I probably did, this is basically our full script. So again, once more to recap: setting up the script, checking the rules, deleting any rules that may already currently exist, adding the new rules in place, and then starting up the stream. So let's go ahead and jump into my terminal here, and then let's go ahead and initiate this guy. All right, so repos, All right, so CD. What project are we in? So the Twitter Cashtag NLP project, CD SRC. And now we are going to start this thing up, and hopefully, all right, so we are checking the current rules. We deleted some rules. Now you see that we have added the rules, and now you can see that the stream has started. Now this is a real live stream right now. So this is actually, so you can see now we are already starting to get some tweets here. So you can see here's one that's tagging CNBC. It's got, and this is where I was saying that some of the some of these tweets seem to be a bit spamish, because you can see if I scroll above here that there was one in here that showed just like just a bunch of these hashtag tweets, and so it seems like a bot might be doing that, and so you can even see there. So following retweet to get $100 in free stocks from Apple, so that kind of seems spammy. This one, some of these might be real though, so. This one might be real. So you can see here we're up to 13 already, which I'm surprised. When I've done this in test, usually it takes a lot longer to get some going. But maybe it's because I also work primarily at night, so maybe it's because we're in the middle of the day. Maybe people are more active. So you can see that we're already up to 16, and so when we hit 20, it should stop. So let's just wait here another minute. And all right, so there's 20, and it stopped. There we go. And that is working with the Twitter API. So, yeah, and so eventually, like I said, the big challenge that I'm going to run into is whenever we need to assemble enough tweets for training data. I don't know if this filtered stream is really going to be useful for that, because we need a lot of tweets, and we need a lot of, not just tweets, but quality tweets. And some of these tweets, if I scroll through here, just looking at the text, so the text is the actual tweet itself. I don't know, this one, I don't know how helpful something like this is for our purposes, or something like this. So this is where I may actually choose to actually go to a place like Kaggle. So if you are familiar with Kaggle, it's a data science competition site, but it's also one of the most popular sites out there for data sets. So I believe there are Twitter data sets out there for for training purposes, for actually training a sentiment analysis model. I think we're going to end up having to go that route. But whenever it actually comes to inference time, and whenever we're actually trying to build this thing for a real purpose, that's where this filtered stream actually might come in handy, because then we can actually grab tweets on the fly and then give it a sentiment analysis on this. So, this last tweet, I don't want to name names, but someone's about to get it. All right. So I probably, Twitter, as you are probably aware, it can be a savage place sometimes. And that is a high level overview of working at least with the filtered stream portion of the Twitter API. Now, obviously we just covered filtered streams. There are a number of different aspects of the API that you can work with. Well, I guess one thing I do want to show is, cause I think my quota reset. So we can now look at my quota again, and you should be able to see that we have queried 20 or so tweets. So let me come back to the project. Okay, 21. So you can see here that you can actually see your quota of how many tweets that you use. So, I get 4 million as part of this essential tier. I'm definitely not going to use all that much, so that's great. And this rolls over every single month, so you can see that mine will roll over again on the 22nd. Yeah, so my voice is giving out, and we're at a good stopping place anyway, so we're going to call it here. I'm not exactly sure what next steps are going to be for this project. I need to consider that. Like I said, maybe that we end up having to use because what I originally wanted to do is I wanted to create something that I could pull some quality hashtag tweets and create my own labeling script, so we can then with ourselves we could analyze that this is a positive tweet or this is a negative tweet. Now, obviously, that is subjective to what our sentiment about what the tweet is. So, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that with this Twitter API. I don't think it's going to be as useful to do that. So I'll consider it, and we may even just jump back to the computer vision rock paper scissors project in the interim. But yeah, for now, I'm going to call it here. So I hope you enjoyed the stream. Hope you found this to be useful. Again, if you do want to use the Twitter API, you will have to fill out an appropriate business case. Just note to be honest about what you were trying to use the API for, and also be careful with your bearer tokens and your API keys that Twitter provides for you. With that, I don't see any questions. I'll Oh my gosh, I'm so used to ending meetings by saying I'll give you X many minutes back. So I was gonna say I'll give you 5 minutes back, but I'll give you. How about this? I'll give you your weekend back. So there you go. Hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next stream.